This committee will come to order. I'll just ask all the members to take their seats. This focus of this committee hearing is on local and private sector initiatives to combat international human trafficking. And trafficking in persons, if we think about it, one of the big questions of civilization is how we treat those who are most defenseless in our midst, and the responsibility that we all have in a society in order to try to come to the aid of those who are most exploited. And in terms of the trafficking in persons, this is one of the most grievous offenses against human dignity. It impacts almost every country on this planet. It disproportionately victimizes girls, children. Experts estimate that in terms of all forms of trafficking, there's 20 million people worldwide subjected to forced labor, a broad designation that covers everything from debt bondage to the forced conscription of child soldiers to the commercial exploitation of millions of women and children trapped in lives of sexual servitude. But even these jarring statistics can obscure the despair in the heart of these crimes. The harm of trafficking may be more clearly seen in the eyes of an abused 12-year-old girl who's being robbed of her freedom, robbed of her youth, and of her hope. And my Chief of Staff, Amy Porter, has worked with young girls in India and in Cambodia, girls rescued from brothels and other deplorable situations whose age ranged from 16 years of age down to 3. As we will hear today, these are not just faraway problems affecting the developing world. More than 17,000 people are trafficked into the United States every year, and there's an estimate of 100,000 American citizens' children who are victims within the United States of trafficking. Just this week, the media has reported a federal investigation into the alleged trafficking of 2 Filipino victims by a Saudi diplomat here in the D.C. area. This committee has played a role in putting human trafficking onto the radar screen for governments everywhere. In the past 13 years, international peer pressure and the potential threat of U.S. sanctions have pushed many nations to try to avoid the stain of Tier 3 designation in the State Department's annual report, and more than 130 countries have enacted anti-trafficking laws. But of course, passing a law is not the same thing as enforcing that law. And not only does much work remain to be done to prosecute traffickers and protect victims everywhere, but a lot of work remains to be done on this committee. Much of the focus on trafficking has been brought by our subcommittee chairman, Smith, over the years. He is the author of the original Trafficking Victims, the TVPA, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. And he held an excellent hearing 2 weeks ago on the State Department's country tier rankings, and I fully expect the committee to return to those issues again in June when the administration releases its annual TIP report. But the struggle that I and Subcommittee Chairman Chris Smith have had over the last few years is with the State Department and their lack of willingness, their lack of honesty in naming names and in putting on the Tier 3 list those countries that are involved. And in many cases, in the case of Cambodia, this corruption goes right up to the top. And it is far past time for this government to be bringing all the pressure we need to bring to bear on regimes around the world that turn a blind eye, or, as in the case of Cambodia, law enforcement agencies that are actually culpable in these abuses. The focus today is on some of the promising local and private sector initiatives that are connecting and empowering communities around the world in the fight against human trafficking. As is the case in so many endeavors, local communities, individual citizens, private businesses are often the engine of real change. And in that regard, I am pleased to welcome as one of our witnesses Los Angeles County Supervisor Don Knabe, who is here with his wife Julie. And their commitment has aided victims and raised awareness among our shared constituents and throughout the state of California. The committee looks forward to learning more today about how these innovative partnerships are developing new tools to defeat traffickers, to rescue their victims, to fight the spread of modern-day slavery around the globe. And I now recognize my good friend, the ranking member, for his remarks before turning briefly to the chairman and ranking member of the subcommittee, of our Human Rights Subcommittee, for 2-minute opening statements. Mr. Engel.